Hello and welcome, dear fellows, dear long-term subscribers, total strangers who just clicked to this video because they were curious what ego depletion is. Welcome. In this video, I'm gonna talk about ego depletion, and I will be reading my highlights of the book. But first, let's start with defining what is ego depletion. Ego, or self-control, or willpower. Ego depletion. How does it deplete? Ego depletion refers to the idea that self-control and willpower are finite resources that can be used up. When people exert self-control, for example, it could be resisting temptations, making difficult decisions, engaging in a cognitively demanding task for a long time, anything. Their subsequent ability to exert self-control can decrease, leading to poorer performance on tasks requiring self-discipline. It's like there is a pool of willpower and you spend from that pool of willpower. People performed poorly on a test of physical stamina after they watched an emotionally charged film and instructed to stifle their emotions doing so. So how does the study go? They collect people and then they made them, maybe they keep one group as the control group, and they made the other people watch an emotionally charged movie, really emotional movie, and they are told to stifle their emotions. So they said, okay, guys, watch the movie, but you cannot make a face, you cannot you cannot express your emotions. So maybe there is a drama, there is a tragedy going on, but they cannot kind of cry, they cannot show their sadness, show their upsetness in their face. After doing so, they performed poorly. The folks who watched the emotional movie performed poorly on a physical stamina test. Maybe they made them lift weights, maybe they kind of run long distances, whatever. I don't know the details, but it's kind of they couldn't force themselves more further because they spent some of their willpower doing, like, stifling their emotions. In the first look, they should be irrelevant, right? So your emotions and your physical stamina should be two separate things, but no, your mind controlling both of the things. When your mind is too tired, kinda, your willpower is exhausted, you cannot spend more willpower on the other task that's demanding it. Another study, people gave up early when faced with difficult task if or when they're given a task of eating celery and radishes instead, while resisting the temptation to eat chocolate and cookies. They are told to eat from this jar, which contains radishes and celery. These are like raw vegetables, not so tempting, while they see other people eating from a jar of cookies and chocolate bars. So they resist the temptation and they kind of feel a bit frustrated that they're not allowed to eat from that jar, and they ate the other thing, the vegetables. And after that, these people, both eating radishes and eating chocolate bars, they're both tested on a mathematical test, but there is one gimmick. The mathematical test was so hard, even there were kind of maybe no answers to some of the questions at all. So it was an unsolvable test. So why are they tested in such a meaningless test? It's because they measure the time they quit the test. So how much they could force themselves into this test. This is measured. And they saw that people who ate celery and radishes did significantly poorly in forcing themselves throughout the test. They gave up earlier than the ones eating chocolates and cookies beforehand. Another explanation would be the blood glucose levels. That's another highlight from the book. It says, when you're actively involved in difficult cognitive reasoning or engaged in a task that requires self-control, your blood glucose level drops. Interesting, right? Maybe not so interesting because we experience this regularly. If you're studying, when you give a break, eat something sugary, and then maybe turn back to the problems you were trying to solve, you would be able to solve those. This is kind of interesting because the willpower is even more related to your blood glucose. It doesn't just drop when you spend your when you kind of spend your willpower or like focus in a cognitive task, but also you can replenish your willpower if you get some glucose back. This is another study. People are given lemonades with glucose and sweeteners, and these two groups tested for ego depletion, and glucose drinkers were not depleted as much as the sweetener drinkers. Ego depletion is something we experience every day, but more importantly, is ego depletion something not so important in our public life, or is it a fact that could be manipulated and kind of used or abused against us? So another study shows how horrible the consequences are. So judges reviewing applications for parole found to be denying more applications when they are hungry and tired. So when they are depleted, basically. Parole is a release card from prison, okay? And they need to apply for parole. And these applications are usually denied, but there some portion of them are accepted. And there are parole judges whose jobs are reviewing these applications for parole from the beginning of the day to the end. Let me read the actual thing to you. It is really, really interesting and alarming even. A disturbing demonstration of depletion effects in judgment was recently reported in something magazine. The unwitting participants in the study were 8 parole judges in Israel. They spend entire days reviewing applications for parole. The cases are presented in random order, and the judges spend little time on each one, an average of 6 minutes. The default decision is denial of parole. Only 35 of requests are approved. The remaining 65 is denied. The exact time of each decision is recorded, and the times of the judges' 3 food breaks, morning break, lunch break, and the afternoon break, during the day are recorded as well. The authors of the study plotted the proportion of approved requests against the time since the last food break. The proportion spikes after each meal, when about 65% of requests are approved. During the 2 hours or so until the judge's next feeding, the approval rate drops steadily to about 0 just before the meal. As you might expect, this is an unwelcome result, and the authors carefully checked many alternative explanations. The best possible account of data provides bad news. tired, and hungry judges tend to fall back on the easier default position of denying requests for parole. Both fatigue and hunger probably play a role. So did you get that? Whenever they eat a meal after their lunch breaks, after their morning breaks, afternoon breaks, they start approving requests in a rate 65% of them getting approved and 35 is denied. But the approval rate drops and drops and drops after they get tired and maybe hungry. And just before their meals, there is an almost zero chance that a request for parole would be approved. So they deny all the requests because they are too tired to make a good decision, and they just fall back on the default position, default decision, which is a denial, because most of the requests of parole are denied. So this is how ego depletion is in effect in some important matters too. So whenever you make an important decision, be sure that you are not hungry or tired and your willpower is still intact. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned some things from it, and I hope you can use this knowledge for good. See you in the next one.